Convene this meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. Greg, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome, everyone. I see we've got a big crowd here tonight. I understand from talking to some of my high school people that I know that we're at the end of a quarter, and everybody's got to get their governmental hours in. So welcome to all of you. We do not have any citizen comments tonight. That'll take us right to the consent agenda. Is there any council member who'd like to remove any of the items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Oh, I'm sorry, Tim.
No, just that I will be voting yes, but not with respect to the minutes because I was absent from that meeting. Okay?
Very good. Okay.
So moved.
And is there a second? Ann?
Sorry, Mr. Lucklider,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner, Mayor Keenan,
Yes.
Mr. Nancy Zerker,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson, Vice Mayor Gerber,
Yes.
and Ms. Saleh.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to second readings. Ordinance 99-14.
Rezoning approximately 120 acres located on the west side of Avery Road, south of the intersection with Rings Road at the southern city limits from R Rural District to PUD Planned Unit Development District. This is the Avondale Woods Plan to facilitate the future development of up to 360 single and multifamily housing units and 37 acres of open space.
Very good. Ms. Husak?
Good evening, members of council. It's very fast. I didn't even have time to get nervous. This is ordinance 9914, which you saw at the last meeting you had in September for introduction, and it is an ordinance to rezone 120 acres on the south side of the city for a planned unit development for multifamily, single-family housing, as well as lots of open space. There were some questions regarding private drives, public streets within this subdivision as proposed at the last reading, and I just quickly have a map of the area outlined here in yellow. As I said, it's south of the city. Avery Road is on the east, the CSX Railroad on the west. National Church Residences is on the southeast corner of the site. And here, real quickly, the proposed preliminary development plan. In your packet, you have the proposed development text, which includes all the development standards for the different sub-areas, the clubhouse with the pool, which is supposed to be available to all residents within the area, as well as a description of all the open spaces within the development. As I mentioned, there was some discussion about the private drives and the public streets within the development. All single-family units within the development are accessed by public streets. The main access point at this point is Avondale Woods Boulevard, which comes off Avery Road there on the east side of the development. And as at the last reading, we are recommending approval of this ordinance. We have proposed one additional condition for council to consider as part of the approval of this ordinance, and that potential condition for discussion is that the development text be modified to include maintenance requirements and responsibilities for all private drives within the development, which the private drives essentially are the ones accessing the apartments and potential condo units. Specifically stating that the property owner, including any potential future new developer or condominium owner, is responsible for the maintenance of all private drives, and specify that the City of Dublin shall not be responsible for the maintenance of any of these street improvements. We also included some information in your packets about this subject that the engineering department did a couple of years ago. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them, as is Paul, and then the applicant and their team are here as well. Thank you.
Very good. Counselor?
Yes, I also, I believe, gave the chair the state statute that governs the restrictions, if it would be condominiumized, that they have to have a forced and funded to X percentage. It's very detailed. They cannot be approved to convert until that is all in place, and it's much more strict than our condominium associations, or than our residential associations, and it is Section 5311 of state law. Thank you.
Very good. Council questions? Hearing none, we'll have a vote on the ordinance. Ann?
Mr. Reiner,
I'm going to vote yes, but I just want to say that to the planning department and planning and zoning, that I hope that we don't see, this is sort of a static type of design. It's like 30 years old. And I just hope, God, we don't have any more plot plans developed on this level in the future. I don't think they're conducive to the financial strength of our city, and I just think that this kind of planning is really, really out of date. And we've just got a whole lot of other opportunities that could make for a much more creative lifestyle for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson. Ms. Janice Zerker.
No, and actually I'm voting no for the reasons that John stated.
Vice Mayor Gerber.
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Lucklider.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Yes,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Are we good, Ann?
Ms. Saleh, yes.
All right. Terrific. Thank you. It's been a long run on that one. Let's go to ordinance 100-14.
Sorry. Rezoning approximately 2.9 acres located on the north side of Perimeter Drive between the intersections with Avery, Muirfield Drive, and Hospital Drive from PUD Planned Unit Development District. This is Riverside PCD North Subarea A3 to PUD Planned Unit Development District. This is to facilitate the development of a coffee shop with drive-through.
Ms. Husak.
Thank you. This ordinance was also introduced at the September 22nd meeting, and we have a couple of updates here for you as well. Again, this is for a Starbucks coffee shop with a drive-through in the Perimeter Retail Center, which was just recently approved and construction finished here on the north side of Perimeter Drive. Site is outlined in yellow. Here's the approved site plan that went through City Council in 2012 and Planning and Zoning Commission as well. And as proposed, the applicant is suggesting a Starbucks coffee shop could take up the easternmost tenant space, and the required stacking would circulate around the eastern portion of the site. The plan accommodates 12 stacking spaces as the zoning code would require, and those are illustrated here on this plan. And then on the elevations, you would see just a very minor change for the drive-through canopy there on the eastern portion of the building, which was previously intended to be a patio space. Patio space could still be accommodated on the south side of the building there on Perimeter Drive. Planning and Zoning Commission took 3 actions on this application at their August meeting, and they recommended approval to City Council of their rezoning preliminary development plan with 1 condition. They also approved the final development plan with 2, and then the conditional use also with 2 conditions. Planning is recommending approval of this ordinance also to City Council, and we are proposing 1 additional condition, as there was some discussion about the circulation and the stacking at the first reading. One of the conditions that we're proposing is to require employees to park in this northern parking area, as if cars would stack past the 12 spaces accommodated within the drive-through, they may go around this particular area, and so if employees parked in that area, it wouldn't create conflicts for circulation. So that is our recommendation. The applicant has also included, and that is in your packets, some graphics of drive-throughs within the city. Here is the proposed one, which in blue is kind of hard to see, but it's the darker cars. These are the 12 stacking to code, and then the red ones are beyond the 12 required by code, which, as I said, would potentially block these parking spaces. And then other areas within the city, the McDonald's just near this site stacks 11 on site, and then once you get past that number, they would be stacking within drives that are used by the general public. And then also Tim Hortons, as you saw in the memo, they're required to have 8 stacking spaces on site, which was the requirement at the time that that restaurant opened. And it's pretty quickly that you get beyond that requirement and you're stacking into potentially a public road.
Claudia, could you go back to the Starbucks rendering, conceptual, with the stacking? So in that instance, no,
Sorry.
that one right there. assuming that condition exists, you essentially render those other 12 spaces there non-functional, do you not? I mean, they're not accessible.
Well, the assumption is that people wouldn't stack very long within this area, but yes, there's going to be some maneuvering, some waiting that is required for people to get in and out of those
Well,
spaces.
during the busiest time of operation, when people are looking to park as close as possible to the doors, presumably that's when stacking will be at its greatest, and those spaces will be difficult to access.
Yeah,
I mean, is that a logical assumption?
It is, yes. I mean, there are spaces immediately adjacent to the restaurant in this area available, especially if we're requiring employees to park in this area. That may alleviate some of those concerns. The applicant has also provided some use data that showed that within those busy periods, areas that have a Starbucks with a drive-through that are much more heavy traffic traveled than this area of the city have about 60 visitors within the busy hour total. That includes drive-through and walk-ins. So we're pretty comfortable that those cars would either park or move through the drive-through fairly quickly.
You know, my experience in working at in the area of the historic Dublin, that we've talked and talked and talked and talked some more about employee parking. But employees park where they want to park. And they seem to want to park right in front of where they work. So while it may be nice to say this for our purposes, the fact is that they don't do it, you know, that they either don't manage their employees effectively, or the employees don't care what they're told, or I don't know the reason for it, but in general, we have not been successful with that kind of expectation. And so they lose their own customers by their employees, you know, taking up parking spaces that a customer might use. So I just say that it's sort of rhetorically, not that I expect you to answer it, but it seems like more of a marketing tool than in reality of what happens.
Council, any other questions?
No.
I just wanted to clarify a couple things. First of all, the current text, the reason why we're here, presumably, the current text specifically or explicitly, I believe, the report says prohibits drive-through uses, correct?
Correct.
And the text also prohibits fast food.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm struggling with that a little bit. I mean, coffee's not the only thing that is sold here. I mean, you know, there are food items, you know, and in my experience, you know, there are more and more food items all the time. I mean, they want to make money from selling the food. So what's the threshold? What's the demarcation point where, you know, Starbucks, you know, qualifies as an establishment that serves food, you know, versus we're just a coffee shop? I mean, you know.
Yeah, we had a long discussion about that at Planning and Zoning Commission as well.
I'll bet.
We've had lots of discussions about fast food. I think in the end, the Planning Commission felt comfortable that a coffee shop for this particular tenant, a coffee shop in general, wouldn't fit that category of fast food, with the idea being that you don't go here to eat. You may go here to have a coffee and then pick up something to eat. In their conditional use approval, they specifically required the conditional use to be only applicable to a coffee shop, which sort of alleviated that coffee shop versus fast food discussion that they had as well.
You know, Tim, I think you bring up an interesting point, but there are some other providers in there that are also food providers, and might be considered fast food because you go in, buy it, and you leave. So it always goes back to what do we call fast food, which is totally different today than what we originally thought
Right.
25 years, 30 years ago. The truth is, Starbucks could go in there right now. The only reason it's before us, and we would have nothing to say about them going in there to sell coffee, is because they're asking for a drive-through. So they're qualified to be in there any way you look at it, you know, and we're able to say no to a drive-through, and they can make a decision about whether they want a freestanding one without a drive-through, like not a freestanding, but
one like they have in other places that doesn't have a drive-through.
Yeah, I've heard from a lot of people, including the people at Dewey's Pizza, who were excited about the opportunity to have them there, and they thought the drive-through would help give them some visibility.
Yeah.
They noted to me that the building that faces, I don't know, was that Perimeter or whatever that is
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
there?
on the south side, yes.
Is it closed off? There's no wind, they can't be seen. At the back of that building has no visibility to tell what's really there. And they were complaining about that. That's a whole nother deal. But at the end of the day, they were excited about having that many people go through there in the course of the morning, and it wouldn't impact their operations because they don't open till late morning, 11 o'clock, 11:30.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike, and with all due respect, I mean, they also like neon lights and the ability to put a spotlight at them.
Agreed.
I get that, but what I think is interesting is that when this rezoning was approved, drive-through uses were explicitly prohibited. Now, why is that? And what's different today?
We never, ever would have approved this rezoning had it been had a drive-through been included. I feel like this is sort of a bait and switch, honestly. I'm really,
Well, I think it's a great
Really?
tenant. I mean, for the property owner, I get that. I'd want them as a
Absolutely.
tenant as well. And it's a great attraction, but I have to go back and look at, let's go back to the beginning of the rezoning. And why was it zoned to explicitly prohibit drive-through uses? And this is a beautiful building. It's an absolutely beautiful building. And just look at this and imagine it, after all the effort that was put into four-sided architecture here, and we're going to have a menu board, and we're going to have cars stacked. It's unfortunate to say the least.
Anything new to come? Any other comments? Let's have the vote then.
I'm sorry, this includes all the conditions plus the additional conditions?
Yes.
as well? Okay. Ms. Salee?
no.
Mr. Lucklider?
No.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
No.
Okay, thank you. That'll bring us to ordinance, first reading, ordinance 101-14.
Rezoning approximately 4.91 acres on the east side of Avery Muirfield Drive, approximately 500 feet north of the intersection with Terra Hill Drive from PUD, Planned Unit Development District, Indian Run Meadows Commercial, to PUD Planned Unit Development District. This is Indian Run Meadows Commercial revised, to revise the development text to permit up to 1,680 square feet of outdoor patio space in front of an existing restaurant within the shops on Muirfield Shopping Center.
An introduction?
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Ms. Husak, you're busy tonight?
Just a little. You may recall this application came before you a couple of years ago. I think it was about 2, for Mary Kelly's, who operated a restaurant at this address at that time. And we'd been working for quite a while with the shopping center owners, with the tenants, to figure out a way to create patio space for them that would be the least interfering with the adjacent residential uses within the area. There were a lot of complaints at the time about how the shopping center was run, how deliveries were taking place, and we ultimately came up with the idea to have a patio space in front of the restaurant. And the development text was written in a way that it was written so that it was only for Mary Kelly's. Essentially, the restaurant in operation at the time of that approval was entitled to use that patio space in front of the restaurant. Well, Mary Kelly's is no longer in business, and Shadon Muirfield has taken over that tenant space. And with that, they are here before you tonight to essentially allow the use of this patio space in front of the restaurant as it was previously approved for Mary Kelly's. The proposal continues to be proposed in 2 phases, with phase 1 retaining landscaping immediately adjacent to the restaurant building and patio space and tables in front of that, and then phase 2 being removing the landscaping and having more tables and chairs within that area. Really, nothing has changed except that there is this little corner cut out to make room for this fire hydrant that is existing today. There's 2 trees that are being retained. All the patio amenities are the same. The operational details are the same. It really is just a development text amendment to allow the Shade on Muirfield tenant to use this patio space. Planning and Zoning Commission approved it for council review at their August meeting, and we're here before you to request approval of this as well. There were 2 conditions that the Planning Commission included as part of the final development plan, which were the same as were in place for Mary Kelly's regarding the storage of the furniture during the off-season, and then removing of the patio if the restaurant was going to not be in business anymore. And with that, the applicant has worked with adjacent residents and their representative as well, and we have not received any complaints on that end at all, and we're recommending approval at the second reading.
Very good. Any questions of Claudia?
Yeah, can I ask a quick question? I think I read in there, the only access is going to be through the front door.
True.
Isn't that going to be a little strange? People are going to be, I mean, there are going to be people gathered there waiting for their tables, and the waitresses and waiters are walking through the front door with their food.
It is a tad awkward as far as that circulation goes, but to keep the patio spaces outside of the front of the restaurant and have minimal changes, none, to the exterior elevations, that was really the only way this was going to work.
Okay.
Excuse me, think Dublin Village Tavern,
Yeah.
same
Yeah,
condition.
good point.
I mean, it's not ideal.
Maybe this, on the cross there that you're saying is going to be removed, I guess you're saying it's going to, because I thought when they ended up putting in the fence, it was not put in properly, and it's taking up too much space.
It does appear that way, correct, especially in this area where there is a landscape bed and that fire hydrant. You really don't have access through there if you needed to walk or have a wheelchair or something like that.
So that's going to be changed?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Very good.
But to follow up on that question, if I'm reading this correctly, there's at least a 6-foot minimum width from fence to curb?
That they're trying to maintain, yes.
Okay.
Did you say try or will?
With this proposal, the 6-foot wouldn't be in place currently with this landscape bed because that cuts out that little area.
And the same is true on the other side of the front door?
Should be, yeah.
And we consider that an adequate width for people to pass?
The requirement would be 3 for building code.
I'm sorry?
3 feet is the requirement for building
3
code.
feet? Okay, thanks.
Okay, does the applicant like to speak? Just state your name and address, please, for the record.
Jill Tangeman, Vorsater, Seymour and Pease, 52 East Gay Street, here on behalf of the applicant, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. As Claudia stated, it's really just to allow Shades to use the patio that was approved for Mary Kelly's.
Very good. Any other questions, council?
I just wanted to ask the applicant's representative if she would have any objection to passing this as an emergency this evening for the convenience of everyone.
We would have no objections. Mr. McCash is the neighborhood representative I've been working with. If he doesn't have any objections,
Okay, thank you.
If that's the case, then I'll,
Well, wait, Tom wants to
oh,
talk.
you want to hear from him? Okay.
Mr. McCash?
Man, I don't even get a chance to speak before he does it. Yes, Tom McCash, 55
ready.
South High Street, Dublin, Ohio. Represent 2 of the adjoining property owners on there. We work with the applicant in this particular instance. It's very minor change to allow shades to be in there. I do believe that, and the applicant may address this, the adjustment in the fence, you notice in the back corner there, extends back to the corner. That is, to my understanding, to access a door. So I believe they're accessing
There.
their patio
Yeah,
through that
that
as
was what
opposed to
was
directly through the
intention
front.
before.
So, but other than that, we are supportive of it passing through emergency and dispensing with the second reading.
Very good. Any further questions?
I only suggest that for the convenience of the neighbor so that they don't have to come back for another meeting.
Yeah, we got it.
We're fine.
So make the motion to dispense with public hearing and treat this as an emergency.
Second,
Okay, Ann?
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
yes.
And on the ordinance?
I'm sorry. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner? And
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Very good. And that takes care of that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Ordinance 102-14.
Authorizing the city manager to execute necessary conveyance documents to acquire a 0.182 acre more or less permanent easement, 0.191 acre more or less temporary easement from Millennium Office Complex LLC at the property located on France Road for relocation of overhead utilities underground along France Road, declaring an emergency.
I'll introduce it.
Mr. Hammersmith.
Members of council, you have before you this evening the last of the easements necessary for the burial of overhead electric and telecommunications lines along France Road. This particular grantor tonight is the last of 5 properties, and this being the Millennium Office Complex located along the west side of France Road, north of Blazer. We have reached an agreeable value for this acquisition of $48,000. Staff does recommend this evening that council dispense with the public hearing and approve this ordinance as an emergency measure. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, council. Hearing none.
Treat as an emergency?
Second.
Thank you. Ann?
Ms. Saleh? Yes. Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
And on the ordinance.
Ms. Saleh?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
And Mr. Peterson?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ordinance 103-14.
Adopting and enacting a supplement to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Dublin, Ohio.
Counselor?
It is a housekeeping. We do this 4 or 5 times a year to supplement our code after we've passed ordinances. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Housekeeping, is there a motion to dispense with public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. On the motion?
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Ms. Saleh? Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Keenan?
Yes. And on the ordinance?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Janice Zerker?
Yes.
Ms. Saleh? Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? Vice Mayor Gerber?
Yes.
And Mayor Keenan?
Very good. Thank you. That'll bring us to staff comments.
Yes, the first item we have is a letter of intent, a non-binding letter of intent with the Casto Company for the Taller Flats proposed project. At the last Monday evening's workshop with City Council, there was a review of the project and some of the proposed terms of the letter of intent that, as we move forward, would then turn into a development agreement with the developer of the project. And as we talked about at the meeting last time and as identified in the staff memo, that any of the significant developments within the Bridge Street District will require significant participation by the city with regard to some of the public infrastructure that's needed. And this is one of those projects where significant improvements, such as the John Shields Parkway through the development and all the way out to Tuller Parkway, will be included as part of this development agreement and the internal roadways. And based on council's direction at the meeting last week, we prepared the non-binding letter of intent, and we'd be happy to address any of the questions. And Terry Fogler is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Council?
Just real quick, Marcia, and we talked about at the work session, the mixed use and that dynamic and how it was limited in this area. And there's a paragraph here that says the developer agrees that it will incorporate more mixing of uses in the integration of a wider variety of housing design. So that's not in this area though, right? That's as further as.
That's correct.
So that didn't change what we talked about.
No, what you have on that exhibit is Phase 1. The future mixed uses would be as part of a Phase 2 development if this developer were to move forward, and it's further to the east as it gets closer to Dublin Village Center.
So that paragraph addresses different phases. Do these drawings address different, would the other phases would look the same as these, or?
We haven't had those discussions with them yet. It's possible, but we haven't had that level of detail yet.
So that's more of a suggestion that that's something we're interested in, and highlighting the fact that we were interested in that.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
So to follow up with that comment, the area that is now, I think, shown as apartments or residential, that there's 3 boxes there. I don't have my thing in front of me here. There was a question and conversations at the P&Z level in the minutes that they were highly supportive of retail or mixed use in that area. Yet in this plan that Greg is referring to, it shows 100% residential. So, yeah, so that's A and C in Block G here, Long John Shields.
The orphans that were, at one time, they referred to them as being orphans or...
Yeah, so what we're voting on tonight gives them permission to not have any mixed use in that area, is that correct?
That's correct. I think part of what we presented last Monday was our view, the applicant's view, and others that we've talked to, that we don't think retail and office and other uses are appropriate there. What they have said they will consider there is kind of live-work units that could front on the street there. But they have committed to the mixed use and changing design ideas for the next phase. They have represented to us, and this also has, that design character and stuff will also be different in the next phases. I don't think you'd want this many more buildings and units of the same design type continuing to the east. So I think it's important that there be design changes to the approach as well as a mixing of uses, and that's what's meant by the language that you see in that one section.
As that,
How does a live-work unit differ from a incidental business?
There are aspects of kind of the frontage of those that would be more engaging to the public and more obvious that there could be space there, but that's all architectural stuff that has to be worked out as it goes through the reviews with Planning Commission and others.
So is a live-work like it's like be a townhouse, it'd be an office down in the lower level, and
Yes, I
then
think
living
it's-
quarters above?
And
something-
meant to have a more engaging first floor to kind of professional service clients and others that could be there. That'll still be, again, something Planning Commission would look at and be comfortable with.
Are there any of those in town anywhere in the region?
It's much more, though, being incorporated mixed-use kind of environment, especially where you have folks who are working from home and occasionally will need to meet with folks there and want something that has more of an office presence there as part of a main floor presence. But I think Joe Sullivan had some ideas that he bounced off Planning Commission early on. We'd like those vetted out more and explored as a possibility here to activate that space a bit more.
So are there additional parking issues with that?
All that has to be looked at as part of it.
I mean,
There's significant extra parking
not
provided.
bunches, but there would definitely be a need for some additional spaces.
Yes, this should be very modest kinds of
Yep.
professional service.
Okay, anybody else?
yeah, I wanted to clarify, we're talking only about the southwestern portion, or are we talking about everything south of John Shields Parkway?
Talking about everything in Phase 1, including all the properties south of John Shields Parkway. There is no other uses other than residential contemplated in all of Phase 1.
Okay, but the live-work portion could be in this red box in the
Integrated
southwest?
into those apartments,
Okay.
probably any number of places. They wanted those to be largely limited to the south, the properties that fronted the south side of John Shields Parkway.
Right. I wanted to mention something that wasn't clear the other night, and in subsequent conversations, I was not at this Planning Commission meeting due to my very busy travel schedule this past summer. So I wasn't present for the discussion, and in reading the minutes, I didn't fully grasp what Planning Commission was asking for. But a subsequent conversation with the Planning Commissioner sort of clarified. What was important to the Planning Commission was not that we had green space on that south side of John Shields Parkway, but that we leave those buildings or that area sort of blank for the future possibility of some sort of mixed use, and that we didn't commit all of that land to mixed use, or I'm sorry, to residential only, but that we perhaps, phase that in Phase 2 or somehow exclude that land south of John Shields Parkway. And it was not that they wanted it to be edgeless and just green space. And I did not get that from our discussions last Monday night, and I didn't get it from reading the minutes. So I just wanted to clarify that that was Planning Commission's intent.
Apologize if we didn't make that clear. When we mentioned that Planning Commission felt it should be set aside in the event some future commercial, retail, other uses could happen there, that would be their preference. They were not supportive of green space there. They particularly had concerns with the dog park idea that was part of it.
Right, but we talked a lot about it needing an edge, and their suggestion is the edge should be some sort of mixed-use retail, something,
Correct.
Maybe residential on the upper floors, retail mixed-use, something on the, different on the first floor.
I think
And
our
that was,
posture was, we didn't believe that would happen, that it would be basically stay green for a very long time if you're looking for any kind of viable first-floor retail activity or commercial activity.
The problem that I have with the Phase 1 being all residential is, to me, what the draw to living here was going to be, the retail and restaurants and everything. Otherwise, it's just another apartment complex. So now we're not getting any of that.
Yeah, I think as with any retail, as with any restaurant or other activity, I think it's important to be very strategic about where that goes. The reason your plan for this district calls for this to be all residential is the recognition that this is a poor location for those kind of activities. This is population that you will want to walk to and support the development you hope happens to the east, the development that you are been reviewing to the west of this project, where even that, with tremendous visibility on a major arterial, lots of density, still has a very modest amount of restaurant retail activity, in it. What you want to do is have a few key locations where this stuff can be successful. A lot of mixed-use developments, and it's been a national challenge where communities have required activating first-floor uses, and it has just sat there and failed. And they've tried to come back and make it resident, because the notion of kind of mixing use and ignoring where it can be successful and kind of market opportunities. I think our best sense, and the developer concurs with this isn't a location where that could be successful on that. This would be a very poor, hidden, secondary kind of location given to where restaurants would want to be, for example, or other kind of retail would want to be. And they were even, if you recall, very modest with the amount of non-restaurant retail in their 2 million square foot project. It's a fairly modest amount. And I think part of that's to make sure it's successful, has good visibility, has a lot of density around it. This is residential density that supports the other stuff that's located along the strong edges, which will be those portions of Bridgepoint, those portions of Dublin Village Center that redevelop, and if similar things would happen eventually along 161.
I think there's an example to the back of Crawwell. There was a restaurant back there that's just turned into, I think, a daycare, but it sat back there for a while. It never.
It wasn't a restaurant.
It wasn't a restaurant at one time, I believe. It was.
Must have been.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
years ago.
and of course, then to your point about the edges, all the other activity in Perimeter Center, the Giant Eagle Center and all that development certainly supports that whole area. And in fact, is one of the advantages to being in a Crawwell, because you can walk to the stores,
Right.
walk to the restaurants, walk to really anything that's over there. So anyway,
I'm trying to find Exhibit B, it's making reference to the architecture. Is that the,
That should be those renderings, Joe. They're not labored property, yes. The same things you saw last time. And the only thing that is being suggested in this agreement is general conformance with the character of those renderings that have been shared with you and Planning Commission.
that's these guys here.
Yes.
well, didn't we pass something a few weeks ago where we said no more than 20% hardy plank or that type of thing? Do these pictures represent that?
Yeah, they still have to comply with all that. There's no reference there to what those materials are. That's more variety of materials, architectural style, the way it engages the street. Materials, they have to comply or seek waivers, and those will be evaluated on their own merits.
And I think I'd rather say that in the document as opposed to attaching Exhibit B, because I'm not sure what all this is.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of aspects of code compliance that aren't dealt with in the LOI, a lot of aspects of detailed designs, development agreements. Could certainly add a statement to that if you'd like, with regard to clarification that say any waivers that are required need to be pursued and shall be evaluated on their merits by the developer. We're happy to add that in the architectural statement if you'd like.
That work for you, Rick? I mean, it's going to clarify. It's better than not having it.
But this is not meant to imply concurrence with any particular materials or use of.
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding that, that aside from setbacks and things of that nature, so that we can begin to define the roadway and the like, that the architecture, those sort of things would still go through the process, be that through staff, ART, or through the Planning and Zoning Commission.
That's correct. Windows, all those detailed materials and requirements still apply.
And that the pictures that were presented to us and are also attached to this agreement, that might be it may not be.
Right. I think that was their iteration after they got concerns from you as a body and from Planning Commission to vary the architecture. Those renderings were produced. They were generally received positively by both those bodies, and they just want to give you the comfort level that that's still the character they're intending to use. But all the details of architectural review, materials, code compliance still apply.
You think that's clear to them as well?
But we'd be happy to add that to the LOI if you'd like.
I think that'd be a good idea. I mean, these exhibits are attached for a reason.
Yeah.
And if they aren't reflective of
Yeah.
what it is we're going to want, then I'm not sure what the reason is.
I want this to be scrutinized, consistent with the code, be that through staff or be that through the Planning and Zoning Commission. And maybe it's the lawyer in me, but when I see these attached, that seems to make a very strong inference that if it looks like this, then it's going to be okay.
Well, and the image is more powerful than the words.
Yeah.
If you just pick this up and leaf through it, what you would take away is what this image is.
Exactly.
And it's internally, sort of creates an internal inconsistency in the very document.
Counselor?
That's a good point.
Keep going along with what Rick and you all were talking about. I haven't written the whole thing. It's going to be 3 or 4 sentences, but I would suggest that if it is your desire, you pass a letter of intent with instructions to the legal department to draft a paragraph or a number of sentences outlining your concerns and specifically stating that all code compliance requirements, architecture review, all that are not part of this letter of intent, and they all have to go through our process. I don't have the language I want to write this second, but I will be happy to do that and take the responsibility to show it to you when I'm all done. But I think we could move forward with that if that is your desire.
I think it's important that that be memorialized, both for us, for the developer, and for Planning Commission going forward, so they are aware of our expectations. Everyone's aware of our expectations.
So we're clear of what we're going to do. Do we need any action? Do you want to,
Well-
you're going to bring that back, or we're agreeing to this? Just,
Well, we can add the language that states something about if the applicant's required to come back and request waivers for those areas where they do not meet the code, and include that in the letter of intent. And if you're okay with the rest of the letter of intent and this information added, then we can go ahead by motion, have council direct us to execute the modified letter of intent.
okay, so you're looking for a motion to approve this letter of intent subject to the changes we just discussed.
Yes.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I guess I'm a little less comfortable with saying, we expect you to bring forward a waiver. How about,
Well,
excuse
me, what
about
I
we
was
want you to
thinking
comply
of
with
is
our
that we
code
would
and-
we'd put the waiver we'd mentioned
Well-
that the waivers, that they still have to go through a waiver process if they do not comply with the...
I don't think we need to put it in the letter of intent. I agree with Amy
Yeah.
that that's the process. So they
Right.
are expected to meet our code.
That's-
And if they're not, then they know what the process is.
Right.
Right, but
that
I
they
want to
would
be a little more
following, which is
specific.
seeking a waiver.
Amy, I want, go ahead.
I mean, if they don't meet code, the way it's currently set up, they have to get a waiver. But if we want to clarify it and make sure everybody is under that same understanding, and that the letter of intent doesn't supersede what's in the code, we can add something that states that they're required to get waivers in any instances where they don't meet the code.
Seek waivers.
seek waivers?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because they might not get it.
We're coming back in
You
2
hate
weeks,
it
aren't we?
being a foregone conclusion is what I'm hearing.
We're coming
Right,
back
right,
in 2
and-
weeks. Why?
And I think that when we were having the discussion,
Excuse me?
I'm sorry.
I think they want approval tonight on this.
Well, I know they do, but, this is, I mean, no offense to staff, but
Help me with the timing of, in terms of, can this wait till the next meeting? What are the
Again, there's
issues?
nothing non-binding about this. These are this is purely non-binding. There's nothing about this that triggers anything from a regulatory perspective.
I
or deal.
prefer to see the entire document before,
It's just a notion of to what extent do we begin to bring before you draft development agreements? Does the developer begin to spend the next level of investments in reviews and
I
stuff?
think
I'm sure.
we're almost there, but I hear a lot of discomfort. I think it needs to all come back
I
with
think
the
that would be
revisions and let
fine.
everybody have a chance to read it. Is that okay with everybody?
I withdraw my motion.
Good.
absolutely.
Motion's withdrawn? Okay. All right. You're on it.
Yeah, we'll get,
We'll draft something and we'll circulate it, and we'll have it in your packet for you next time.
All right, thank you. Thank you,
Perfect.
Terry.
Thank you.
Very good.
second item under staff comments, this was in your items of interest, but just so that we get it on camera for the public, the fact that we will begin leaf collections, and they actually started today, I believe, and they go through December 1st. So we'll be out busy, and the information's out on the website with regard to the different zones or regions within the city and the timeframes for the pickup.
It looked to me like things are really late this year, too, at least from my experience.
Yeah, and depending upon what rain we
Yeah.
get, it could
Agreed.
come down
Well,
pretty
you're right.
quickly this week.
You want to add something, Tim?
Yeah, just to be clear, in this first week, both zones are being collected. Am I right?
I believe so. There's at least one other time that I think both zones are collected. The website shows which weeks they're collected
Right.
by zone.
Right, but in this first week, both zones are being collected, and I think it's in the final week both zones get collected. And then it alternates, I don't know which way, after this first week, right? Okay, great, thanks.
Very good. Okay?
Another item, at your desk this evening, there was a flyer from ODOT with regard to the 270-33 interchange and information on the 161 Riverside Drive roundabout. And just to let you know that today, Megan and Tom Slack from ODOT spoke with the Convention and Visitors Bureau just to provide them information and update on the two projects.
I saw they had the minutes out right away, too. It was quick.
Oh, they get them out already?
Yeah.
Another item's, Allison, if she could come forward, the IFEA award that the city received.
I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to go to Kansas City to the International Festival and Events Association Conference, and we were lucky the Irish Festival won 9 awards from things ranging from our Facebook page to the annual report. But we also were very happy to receive for the second time, I have to read this because it's the strangest wording of a word, the International World Festival and Event City Award. And basically what that says is Dublin's a great place to have events and festivals internationally, locally. It's a really impressive group of other cities. It was great to meet and talk to all of them as well. We had a representative from Dubai, Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia, Philadelphia was the only other U.S. town, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. So we were really happy to see that, and I'm going to present this award to you tonight.
Terrific. All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Very nice, adding to our international aplomb that we continue to be involved, so that recognition. We thank you for all your hard work on that, and staff and everyone that's a part of that. I know we have some DIF stuff coming up pretty soon, too.
Yeah, the annual meeting will be the first Tuesday in November. It's actually Election Day, and I know you're going to be there.
I'll be
to
there.
present our awards to our volunteers that night as well.
Terrific, thank you. Any questions, or anybody want to add anything? Thank you so much. Congratulations again.
One other item, a memo that was in your packet on snow preparedness. It's hard to believe we have to start getting ready for all the snow that's going to be coming here soon. Maybe it'll stay away, we hope. But the memo in the packet goes over the detail that the staff went through over the last several weeks, and then specifically last Thursday with regard to a rodeo. And then the employees all drove their routes that they are assigned for this season coming up. And Councilmember Saleh was there during the rodeo and drove a big snowplow. A couple of us on staff drove a little tiny pickup, so we're a little embarrassed.
Well, let's be clear, she's the only one that had a
I know.
CDL.
That's what we said, we're not allowed to. But anyway, just so you can kind of see what happened, we have a short video to show you.
Oh. Is Amy in this video?
You'll see.
It could be. Amy shared with me how hard it is to drive that truck and simultaneously move that plow up and down, which is what they have to do when they're clearing snow. There we go. Let's give her a hand. Yeah.
Where did I come in? Where did I place?
It is a good experience to get in one of those trucks and see what all they have to do, and it's a hard job to get that done. So I think the staff had a lot of fun, and we appreciate, and they appreciate that Amy came out to participate in the program on Thursday. And then we also included in that memo information that we will be back to you at the first meeting in November to give you an update on some of our GPS information that we're going to have out on the website. And the last item, one of the things that we've been involved in as far as discussions with Union County and Jerome Township is the proposed Costco development that's been in the paper and discussed. And I would ask Dana to come up and give a quick update on some of the items related to that proposed development.
Thank you, Dana.
Good evening. So this past Friday, Steve Langworthy, Paul Hammersmith, and I attended a meeting that was initiated and hosted by Jerome Township to learn more about the proposed Costco that Marcia mentioned, and that's proposed to go at the northwest corner of Industrial Parkway, State Route 161 Post Road. The Union County Administrator, Economic Development Director, and Engineering Office were also present, as were representatives of the developer. Gary Smith, the Township Zoning Administrator, walked us through a presentation of the project. We collectively focused our efforts Friday on trying to understand the details of what's being proposed, trying to understand the process going forward, and also getting a sense of what the process will be to understand what the traffic impacts potentially could be and the impacts on what the infrastructure might be. So all present agreed that a traffic study will certainly be warranted and that Union County, ODOT, Dublin, Jerome Township, and the developer will need to continue to work together to understand the impacts of the development as it relates to that. This morning, October 13th, the Jerome Township trustees held a special meeting to consider a final development plan for the proposed Costco project. Steve Langworthy and I attended this meeting, and we submitted for the record a letter, which I believe you now have at your place. Sorry we couldn't get that to you till today, but we weren't sure what we were going to say until after we had the meeting on Friday. Additionally, I was permitted to speak, and I emphasize that the City of Dublin recognizes this site has long been zoned for retail use. However, we've expressed before and continue to express our concerns regarding the retail use on this site, the intensity of the development, the long-term impact on the character of the area, and of course, traffic impacts and requirements regarding needing infrastructure improvements, when these improvements are going to be built, and frankly, who's going to wind up paying for them. I did ask that they delay their consideration for this final development plan until more information is understood regarding the specific impacts the project may have. And while they appreciated our concerns, they felt that the impacts on infrastructure would need to be addressed by Union County and the Union County engineer and ODOT. So the Jerome Township trustees did go ahead and approve the final development plan for that this morning. We're currently determining the next steps regarding this project. A traffic study will be conducted by the Union County engineer and ODOT, and will have significant involvement by the City of Dublin. We've agreed to partner in this analysis to aggressively communicate as we have projects ongoing in the area as well. So we'll be determining whether this will actually go to the Logan Union Champaign Regional Planning Commission. We're not sure if that's the case. We think it is, but we're going to check. We're trying to check into that and really verify the process. And staff is putting together a memo for council with more background and up-to-date information on the proposed Costco project specifically, and also the anticipated additional development that's also on the greater site, because this is just one piece of the overall, what's referred to as the Skilkin project, which you may be familiar with. So we intend to have more clarity as to Costco's next steps for final approval as part of that memo. So that's all I have to report tonight. Unless you have any questions, I could try to answer.
So basically, Union County still has a bite of the apple, and they need to put their final approval with respect to traffic?
Yes, that's correct. One thing we did learn is that the overall proposal for the site is 100,000 square feet less than what has previously been approved. So if there's any glimmer of hope in that, that's a piece of it. So that's good news, and I think the other good news is just the communications that we're stepping up with on the project. So.
I know Paul's on the board at LUC, and Tim Licklider is our council rep to LUC. So I'm sure that it sounds like it may be headed that direction. So we want to make sure we attend those meetings and
we certainly
have the input there. So, Anybody else?
I was just curious, so are we still trying to understand the process at this point? Because it's sort of backwards since they're a township, they sort of do one thing, and, we talk about a final development plan, and that's something that we would have vetted through, you would have had the traffic study long before, so this is sort of backwards.
I agree, and it is very different than the way we do things, and the Union County engineer will assess that, and of course, ODOT will have to be heavily involved, but it is a little bit backwards from what we're used to. It's why we're scratching our head a little bit. There was a little bit of, I won't call it disagreement, or I'll call it misunderstanding, as to whether this will actually go to the LUC. The zoning administrator seemed to think it would. Of course, the developer seems to think it won't, but we'll stay engaged with that and see where it winds up.
When you say
so.
zoning administrator, the Jerome Township zoning administrator?
Correct, yes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? You're done?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate the update. We have council committee reports. P&Z rep, Amy, any updates?
Yeah, just one. I wanted to let council know that Planning Commission at our last meeting discussed the sign, the commercial sign situation, and how we had basically said something to Planning Commission. And during the course of that discussion, we sort of discovered that we may be more open as a community, and this is through our economic development and development director's statement to the Planning Commission, be much more open to sort of phasing these signs out altogether, which is not consistent with what he said at our last, when we last spoke about it at council. So rather than act on something that was sort of, we might act on it and then wind up changing it in 6 months, we're studying it further. Staff's going to bring back some other things to Planning Commission, and then I'm assuming we'll forward something to council at a later date. Is that correct, Mr. McDaniel? Okay.
I'm not understanding this at all.
Okay.
So we're revising our sign code?
No, the sign with the temporary vacancy signs that we talked about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not.
I thought you meant the regular signs.
No. These are the temporary real estate vacant, office for rent, retail space for rent signage.
Very
So
good.
that's something that we looked at, and then, of course, all the other things, and that's all I have really from Planning Commission, though.
Okay, admin committee, Rick?
Yeah, just one item very quickly. I guess talking about snow, that means February won't be here pretty soon as well. And I think all of you have a copy of the status of members of our boards and commissions, those that are eligible for reappointment, those that are termed out. We'll monitor this through Ann here in the next month or two and go forward in February with interviews.
Very good, thank you, Rick. Community development, John?
Nothing, Mayor.
Finance, Mary Lee?
Yes, the Finance Committee had a meeting at 6 o'clock this evening, and I'm happy to report that we have so far had a very significant and successful financial year, and as a result of that, our finance director and city manager are recommending that they look at projections now at least 5% higher than last year. You'll recall that we were looking at sort of an even year going into the year, but each quarter now things have progressed positively, and so they're adjusting the projection to be 5% over what we had collected last year. It's a wonderful situation for our community to be in, and I really want to applaud Dana and his staff and Marcia and all of her staff and Angels, because I think it demonstrates the teamwork that is done in this community, and of course City Council's leadership and direction of always seeing economic development and financial stability as the #1 key to our goals for every year, and we're continuing to see the level of diversity that we need in our community to continue to build the kind of income structure that we need, because we have major capital improvements that are coming forward, and this gives us an opportunity to have sufficient money to do that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mary Lee. Public services, Amy?
Nothing, I was just going to tell everyone about my experience driving a snowplow. It was
We got to
very,
see it.
very, very interesting, and I'll tell you what, I have always had a tremendous amount of respect for our drivers, but trying to keep the truck where it needed to be and then keep the plow where it needs to be and not take out fence posts, mailboxes, it's an incredible amount of skill that those individuals have, and I was in awe, actually, of trying to keep everything together in that truck. It was really a great experience and a lot of fun.
Good, terrific. Other reports, is there anything in particular here that we need reported on or that is planned? Nothing? It just happens to be here. Okay, then we'll go to roundtable then. Greg?
Just, Marcia, one quick thing. There was a memo in our packet about the Avery Muirfield Drive and Tullymore realignment of the traffic out there. And the only reason this got my attention is because I used to live right there off of Valley Stream. And my question is, I assume the intention is to get people coming out of the neighborhood instead of coming out Valley Stream to get them to go up to the light by the UDF.
Yes, that's one of the changes that will occur as a result of that.
And when there was traffic calming done along Terra Hill, isn't there some kind of calming thing right there at that
There is.
intersection? Should we revisit that? Because if there's more traffic going through there, is that going to be a problem?
One of the things we can get information on, the number of vehicles that we anticipate that will be impacted there. Because I know that was the issue of the improvements that were done as part of the task force that was put together for Terra Hill, was a substantial amount of time and dedication to those improvements. So that would be something that I think would create some concern on another group of residents.
Sure, and I was just referring to, not to the whole Terra Hill and all the work that they did, but more the roundabout right outside of the UDF. That might
Correct.
just really back up there in the mornings. Because where I used to live, my traffic pattern would change. I would go up there instead of going out Valley Stream.
Unless you were
That was
making a
our
right.
first attempt at a roundabout.
Unless I'm making it right, that's right.
We can calming circles, not a roundabout.
Yeah, it's awful, whatever it is.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we can take a look, and it really does come down to the number of vehicles making those turning movements. I don't know what that number is, but we can definitely count that.
And I'm not even
better
suggesting it
understand
needs
that.
to be changed. I was just, because I had a personal experience with that particular spot, I just thought it might be worth it.
I will tell you, it's not a location that we get any complaints about maneuvering, because several folks do make that movement to get to Terra Hill.
That's all, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Amy?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Very good, Marilee?
Yes, last week I attended the Ohio Municipal League Conference, and here's the material. I'll leave it with Ann in the back room. Michelle Crandall and myself did a workshop on boards, commissions, and task forces, and I must say it was extremely well received, and people were really interested in how we get people to actually apply for these jobs. That several communities that were in the room said that beyond these other things we talked about, they had challenges in just getting people engaged, and so we had a lot of ideas about that, of course. Tim and I had an opportunity to do the tour today at Fuse, because we weren't able to go to the open house, and that is really a very interesting company of Cardinal Health, and the layout is very interesting, and I'd like to thank Steve Stidham for giving us that tour and all, and encourage any of you who haven't had an opportunity to see the space, especially those of you who work in traditional work environments. This would be uplifting to you.
It would be indeed.
Yes.
I mentioned to them I didn't see anybody in there with gray hair when I did the...
No, there definitely were not any gray hairs.
It's all 20-something.
And then I did want to mention that, of course, we're starting to get these emails again from HDBA members regarding the bridge and what we're supposedly going to do and not do and kill their... And I have had a number of residents now talk to me who do frequent the retail places in the area of HDBA, and the owners apparently now are talking to their clients and consumers about how we're going to hurt their businesses and on and on and on. And so I encourage us, I know we have a memo about the communications committee that's going to be set up, but I think it's really important that we get residents on that. I know that's one of the ones listed, but they're as important to be ambassadors for us about what really is going to happen as opposed to what the messages that might be being given out.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind signing the petition myself, but we all know that we have decisions to make, and...
That's right, we haven't made any of those decisions, so it's
And
very discouraging
yeah.
to have the HDBA members supporting and promoting that kind of
There are things that
communication.
have to be done for progress to occur.
Right,
and
yeah.
that's
Thank you.
Our role. Okay, thank you. Tim?
Well, that provides an interesting segue, at least I think so. But the Australian Rules Football National Championship was in Dublin this weekend, and I'm sorry I didn't see more of you out there, because it was really very interesting. You'll recall that the Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau worked hard to obtain that particular event, and it was held at Darry Fields, and it as far as I can tell, appeared to be successful. I was out there on Saturday. Everybody seemed to be having a good time. I think, unfortunately, I think it would have been interesting if there had been more spectators there. But some real true Aussies were there. But there were teams from as far away as Calgary and California, Texas, literally all over North America. The segue is that in the most recent petition that we received from HDBA, I don't know if you noticed, but apparently some of our guests to the tournament signed the petition, which I'm assuming, given that they were from faraway places.
It's a long drive from Australia.
Apparently, some of the proprietors anyway were encouraging them to sign this petition, in spite of the fact that they may never return to Dublin again, but nevertheless, anyway, I digress. The road salt supply, there was a story in today's paper about a local community, which I can't think of which one it was, that was informing their citizens to, prepare to adjust to a lesser standard this coming winter because of the lack of road salt. And I see staff, provided us with a memo, and it looks like perhaps, based on what we had left over from last year, but we have 7,000 tons. We got 300 tons out of the one effort to purchase and so forth. So anyway, Megan, enlighten us, please.
We are in a pretty good situation. It's not what we had hoped for. We had hoped to have 8,000 tons available. However, what we're doing is we're taking measures to ensure that we are prepared to use other materials. Primarily, we're focusing on liquids. So we're taking a look at our fleet and making sure that all of our plows that currently don't have wetting systems on them, we're going to be installing wetting systems on those plows so that all of our trucks have wetting systems. And what that does is it helps basically it puts liquid on the salt before we spread the salt on the roads, and that way it helps the salt to stick to the roads. So that's one thing we're doing. And then we're also looking at other liquids such as beet heat, which other communities have used in the past, and we're going to be using that this winter as well. So we're taking steps to make sure that we're in a good situation.
We know it's in your capable hands.
So how does it happen? We have 7,000 tons and other communities are short.
We were fortunate that we participated on 2 contracts. So we participated on the ODOT contract, and via that contract, we'll have access to 4,400 tons. We had 2,500 tons, I believe, on hand from last year. And then we'll receive an additional 300 tons from the SWAP 4G contract.
And how many tons did we use last year?
Last year, we used about 13,000 tons. But the average in the past, there's spikes in certain years, and really, we haven't been into using liquids all that much in the past, and I think it'll really make a huge difference if we start out at the beginning of the season using liquids.
Excuse me, and typically we budget or assume 8,000 ton.
Right.
So it does vary. Some years we don't use it, and other years we use more.
But this year, the question seems to be whether we'll be able to get more.
Yeah, and the hope is that, salt companies are working to catch up from last year. So the hope is as the winter progresses, they'll have caught up, and then communities will be able to make more orders.
Of course,
So all the communities are really, there's a lot of discussions going on, and we're all working to make sure that everybody has salt. But we are fortunate that we participated on 2 contracts.
Okay, thank you.
I would say not fortunate, but well done.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good planning. John?
Well, Tim, I did make it out on Sunday for the playoff games, and it was really a well-run, well-organized group, very orderly, selling Australian beer along with other things. So it was really a wonderful event. I am sorry that more people really didn't get a chance to come out and see it. And I just want to say to Paul Hammersmith, that is a great solution to the Tully Moore problem. I've always wondered how we were going to resolve that problem, and the overhead signage is probably the best way to do it. So it's a good solution to a bad situation. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Rick?
Yeah, very quickly, at the Fall 2014 Neighborhood Association Leadership Meeting, which will be held this Wednesday, I'll remind everybody, it will be held at Heartland, Dublin, which is over there at 4075 West Dublin Grandview Road. There's an optional tour at 6:30. The meeting starts at 7, so I hope to see you all there. And that's one item. One, I want to thank Megan, Fred, and Laura for the Grounds of Remembrance Maintenance Update, and very anxious to hear what you all come up with. So thank you for getting on this. I know a lot of veterans are anticipating some improvements, and it'd be ideal if we could have them done before Veterans Day, but I know realistically that may or may not happen. So, but thank you for getting on this.
Thanks, Rick. And I just have all of those that are here getting their government time in. You picked a good night for a meeting. We'll stand adjourned.
Executive session.